Tonight, Texas News 5 Chief Correspondent Mike Snyder continues his series, JFK, The Final Chapter. And you say that you have found proof that a diversion plan was carried out.
Unfortunately so, Gene. And I say unfortunately because many of us would consider it sad when those in government betray our trust.
It's very sad.
It is. Researchers, regardless of the subject, hunger for the paper trail to prove something happened. But the proof is even stronger when it comes in the words of those actually involved. And such is the case tonight. While the assassination was a brutal crime in itself, the real crime against the American way of life came after the killing. November 25th, 1963, the day our nation buried President John F. Kennedy, the same day it buried accused assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. And plans to bury the truth about both were already well underway. What we're about to show you for the first time anywhere is that the honorable men who sat here in Washington as members of the Warren Commission unwittingly got caught up in a cover-up. We've obtained secret documents the Warren Commission thought it had destroyed. Secret documents that show, in the words of the Warren Commission members themselves, their shock when they discovered their own investigation had been fixed, that the story had already been decided for them before they held even one public hearing.
They began with the preconception of a lone assassin. They did not investigate the crime. They never intended to investigate the crime.
For years, former Senate investigator Harold Weisberg tried to pry that alleged fact out of the official Warren Commission files. But deep in the National Archives, a January 22nd, 1964 executive session transcript that Weisberg believed contained proof of the stifled investigation was missing, until he discovered this billing statement from the commission stenographer. It showed the court reporter did sit in on the meeting, and that led to this box in the archives containing the steno notes, which have now been transcribed for the first time. This once-destroyed transcript proves the Warren Commission knew it had been had. Meeting late in the afternoon, Senator Richard Russell said, "The FBI is very explicit that Oswald is the assassin or was the assassin, and that they are very explicit that there was no conspiracy. Secondly, they have not run out all kinds of leads in Mexico or in Russia, but they're concluding that there can't be a conspiracy without those being run out." When the Chief Justice and I were just briefly reflecting on this, we said that if this was true and it ever came out, then you would have people think there was a conspiracy to accomplish this assassination. "You are so right," said Congressman Hale Boggs. "Oh, terrible," said Alan Dulles. "Implications of this are fantastic. Don't you think so?" says Boggs. "Terrific," says Senator Russell.
The Warren Commission was under a lot of pressure to convince the public and the world that it was not a conspiracy.
Pressure that came from this FBI report completed just hours after the assassination. As we showed you last night, a letter written just 3 days after the assassination from then Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach to President Johnson's press secretary Bill Moyers said the FBI report could be used to convince the public Oswald was the assassin.
They were terrified. They were scared. They knew they were boxed in. They knew that the FBI had leaked what they did not dare go against.
And the transcript again offers proof. Senator Russell says the FBI would like to have us fold up and quit. "This closes the case, you see. Don't you see?" says Representative Boggs. "Yes, I see that," says Dulles. Chief Counsel Lee Rankin says, "They found the man. There is nothing more to do. The commission supports their conclusions and we can go home, and that's the end of it." Boggs, "I don't even like to see this being taken down." And Dulles agrees. "Yes, I think this record should be destroyed." But now that record has been restored, and it stands as testimony to a crime by our government and those people we trust. And that, many say, left the Kennedy assassination unsolved.
And you will have part 3.
But Texas...
This is the basement floor. He has been shot. Oswald has been shot. Lee Oswald.
Dr. Crenshaw's role in history was not over. Just 2 days later, another victim of the madness that gripped Dallas was wheeled through this hospital emergency entrance. Lee Harvey Oswald, the accused presidential assassin, was shot. And though mortally wounded, he too was brought here. Inside, there was another urgent rush of medics to the trauma room. Among them, again, the young Dr. Crenshaw. As the team was around him at the table, working, trying to save his life, you were called away. What was that about?
The nurse came and tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I would take the phone call.
And I picked up the phone, and it was like thunder, like God was talking. He said, "This is the president, Lyndon B. Johnson." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "How is the accused assassin doing?" I said, "Well, he's critical, but right now he is holding his own." He then said, "I want you to take a message to the operating surgeon and have a deathbed statement from Oswald."
Oswald died on the table without saying a word. Could LBJ have made the call? The answer is yes. 2020 has obtained copies of White House logs from November 24th, 1963. LBJ was in Washington attending church when Oswald was shot at 12:21 Eastern Time. And at 12:45 p.m., the same time Oswald was in surgery in Dallas, LBJ was first told he had been shot by Secretary of State Dean Rusk. Moments later, LBJ, according to historian William Manchester, said to Robert Kennedy, quote, "We've got to do something. We've got to get involved." President Johnson then had 15 minutes to make a call to Dallas before going outside to be with Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy for the procession to the Rotunda, where the late President Kennedy would be lying in state. However, there is no official record of this phone call.
You have to understand the time in 1963. The people that were with this country were telling you what to do, how to do it, and I think the feeling was we went along to get along.
Now semi-retired, Dr. Crenshaw has written a book breaking nearly 30 years of silence.
Could the, what you call a conspiracy of silence, have been out of plain old-fashioned patriotism among the doctors?
No question about that. And Dr. Baxter had wanted no one to say anything because he was worried about commercialization.
Well, I made the statement that any one of us in the school or in the hospital that ever made a dime off of anything they said about the assassination, I would try to see that their medical career was ruined.
You felt that strongly?
Yes. I don't know how many emotions were in that statement, but I felt like it was one that needed to be said.
That's the reason I waited so long. I waited until I felt I'm at the end of my career. I don't fear my peers because I think they believe it too.
This is the basement floor. He has been shot. Oswald has been shot.
However, his story is confirmed by another eyewitness, Ed Hoffman, a deaf mute who is interviewed here for the first time.
I'd gotten off work early because I had a dentist's appointment. I was traveling down the freeway here, and I remembered that President Kennedy was coming to visit Dallas. I parked my car here. I realized at this spot that I would be able to see Kennedy pass close by. I stood here and waited, and I was looking towards where he would be coming from. I suddenly saw two men who looked suspicious directly over there in the car park.
25 years ago, these trees did not obscure the view. From his position at the side of the freeway, Ed Hoffman could clearly see the car park area behind the grassy knoll.
I saw a man standing here, wearing a black hat and a blue jacket. I saw a puff of smoke, and I thought it was a cigarette, but it wasn't. He had a gun, and he walked towards the railroad. He tossed the gun to the second man. Then he turned and straightened his jacket, adjusted his hat, and walked casually away. The man with the striped shirt, the railroad shirt, walked over to the electrical box with the gun. He took the gun apart. He put it in a toolbox. He then walked slowly away in the direction of the railroad track. When the motorcade passed by below me here, I realized that Kennedy had been shot. I was horrified. I saw a policeman standing on the railroad bridge, and I tried to get his attention, but he didn't see me. So I got in my car and drove to the area where I had seen the two men. But there were so many people there, and I couldn't find them. I went to the FBI to tell them what I had seen. They didn't want me to say anything. They offered me money to keep quiet. They didn't understand that it was more important for me to tell them what I'd seen. It was hard for me to communicate with them.
As the presidential limousine was rounding the curve on Elm Street, there was a loud explosion. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like a loud firecracker or a gunshot. And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees on the embankment. I was talking with a patrolman Foster at the time, and as soon as we heard the shots, we ran around to the wooden fence. And when we got there, there was no one there, but there was footprints in the mud around the fence, and there was footprints on the wooden 2x4 railing on the fence.
Were you questioned by the Dallas police on that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you give your name to the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them what you've just told me?
Yes, I did.
Were you subsequently questioned by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
About a month later, I was questioned by the FBI.
Did you tell them what you told me and what you told the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Were you ever called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Good evening, this is Cheryl Merrill. I want to carry on with the evidence that's on YouTube. Outstanding evidence that really proves without a doubt from very solid, credible people speaking that with evidence that there is absolute proof that RFK's assassination, President-elect RFK, there was a second gunman and he shot point blank the back of his head. Absolute truth, and the reason it never came to light, even though it was in the autopsy, was because the defense attorney for Sirhan never asked the question, how far was the gun from the ear, nor did he ask for a consultant to comment on the findings of this. They would have proved beyond a doubt that there was a second shooter. It would have opened up the case all over again, but they wanted to close it down. They didn't want to ask anybody else in the room. They just wanted to accuse the patsy Sirhan. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say was got the Warren Commission evidence that they were shut down from the get-go by those higher above them, that they would not be conducting a real criminal inquiry investigation of witnesses or anything. They had the ending before they could even start. And of course, that Alan Dulles, who was fired by President Kennedy, was one of the lead investigators. So anyway, we've got evidence that there was a conspiracy to keep quiet who really shot him, who really killed him. Got evidence of witnesses of the grassy knoll, got evidence of the puffs of smoke on camera in 2 instances. One that's just absolutely clear, the other is a little more difficult because it actually shows the shooter behind the grassy knoll at the same time that Miss Mormon took the exact photograph at the exact same time of the president being hit. You can see in the background where the sniper's standing. He has a badge on. He has a puff of smoke outside his gun. He just fired, and he has glasses on. He looks a lot like that Officer Tippett from the Dallas Police Department who was killed a couple hours later. Likely was the gunman. I'm just saying because he was killed to get rid of the potential confession, and if he was spotted, they would want to kill him. That's just the way it is. They kill off everybody who cooperates with their scheme. Killed off Oswald, who admitted he was a patsy in front of all the cameras, so they went in and they killed him. This is just I just played these clips for you so you can understand that there's plenty of evidence to reopen these cases. They reopen cases for men like Bill Cosby. that there was no murders there. There were no murders for Bill Cosby. He just raped a bunch of women. Why can't they reopen this for John F. Kennedy? Why can't we get some justice for RFK? He had 10 children. He must have missed them terribly after he died. And missed raising his children. They needed him. So it's a real crime when it was done, as well as stealing him from the American people. They say that he would have definitely become president. There was no doubt he was going to be president for 8 years. Overwhelming popularity. The one downside I wanted to say about all this is that there is a downside to this thing about President Kennedy, because there's a lot of evidence that election was stolen, and it was a dirty election. And there's also evidence that John Kennedy created a problem, a dangerous, reckless problem on the seas when he was in the Navy. And he did save a couple people's lives from it, but he caused it. His recklessness caused it, and then he had to save people. And though he got a Medal of Honor or something, I guess, for being a hero. So people who create problems and then the people suffer, and two people died, but he saved others' lives, and then you get the label of a hero. Well, the same thing happens. I mean, if you go to government and steal the election from a man who was much more experienced and qualified, that's not right. It's illegal. And so, I mean, all these things I'm looking at how it all started, and I'm just thinking that the assassination just makes him look like a god or something. But his dad especially did do some dirty things to get elected. So keep that in mind. He wasn't a great man. So I'm not saying that he's a god or anything. He certainly was handsome. He certainly was a father figure for the nation, of being a family man at the time, even though he had affairs on Jackie. I'm just saying that, we think that was a horrible thing what they did to him. The way they blew his brains out in front of all of America. It caused a lot of trauma for people for years. It caused people depression. And then when they did it to RFK, the same kind of thing with the patsy. And it's just really interesting because this started. He was the first president when I was in 1960 when I was born that I had in my life, and he was taken away from me, and so was RFK. We were very hopeful of RFK. Even when I was 8 years old, I was hopeful that he would be elected. I was aware of him, and I'm just saying that they were all taken from us, and it changed this nation, and it gave us a bunch of wicked men that took their place, and it got more evil and more evil along, the path of where we're going. And I know now that, the CIA is waking up, the FBI is waking up, that we know exactly what happened, and they're realizing we're coming to the answers and the evidence and everything, and they're still trying to cover up, So the next thing they're going to do, because these are really evil people. The FBI covered up, the CIA covered up. The next thing that I know is coming is because they want to cover all this up. They want to kill us all. They just want to get rid of us. We're baggage to them. They're very arrogant and above the law. They think they can do whatever they want. These are really evil people. Okay? You're talking real, dire evil. They did the psyop of ISIS. They started ISIS, the CIA and Mossad. They started it, the U.S. government funded it, sent them Toyotas, sent them resources through John McCain, got pictures of John McCain with their operatives. It's a psyop for Israel so they could strategize something for their next war, so they could get something for their next war. And I'm sure some of those murders and beheadings were staged, but some of them, I don't know if they were real or not. Some of them may have been staged, but, it was a psyop. Terrifying psyop. Anyway, I'm saying that there's a lot of evidence, and there's no doubt in my mind. As the Dr. Crenshaw, Dr. Cyril, I didn't play any of Dr. Cyril Wecht WECHT, because I just played him in the recent podcast. But I just wanted to get this out of the way. I'm absolutely convinced that we've got the evidence, complete evidence, that the government covered up. And Johnson was involved in the covered-up. Got the evidence Johnson was involved in the cover-up. Phone call to Dr. Crenshaw for Oswald being on his deathbed, wanting a confession. Got the evidence through the program 2020 that did research. That's when journalists were allowed to do their jobs back then. They weren't so heavy-handed on them. They were allowed to do their jobs. Now they're tightened up. They're not allowed to do their jobs. Now they're just propagandists for the liars and the wicked CIA and FBI and whatever. The FBI, you give something to the FBI, they're not going to do good with it. They just use it for evil, to cover up. So, also got some interesting videos, home videos. I'm not playing that. I didn't play that here, but showing the Dallas Book Depository windows right at the time of the assassination. And one picture appears to have a couple people on the 6th floor. The other, I don't see anybody, so I'm confused about that, what that's all about. But, yeah, I thought, it's, I don't expect to see Oswald pointing his gun up there. Let's put it that way. So, we've got the evidence, and now that empowers us to know who the enemy is. And we know the enemy now. And we have to know the enemy. What are their next moves? They want to come and kill us. They want to depopulate the planet. They're working with other foreign nations towards world government. That's the enemy of America. And they're here. They're operating on our soil with psyops and all kinds of things. And like I said in the last podcast, the reason the Democratic Party is so whipped up the way they are in intensity is they're working on behalf of the CIA and China, whatever. They're all working towards world government now.